The king had come. You welcomed him with praise, yet misunderstood his purpose. Knowing he would be betrayed, he broke bread with you and invited you into a new covenant. And in agony, his final hours were spent petitioning the Father, and you betrayed him and sent your Savior to trial. You crucified him, a perfect life exchanged for the guilty, and with his blood, he paid your bond.
Well, it's 15 hours until Jesus dies. That's where we're at in our series as we're looking at the last final hours of his life. And a couple weeks ago, we started with the triumphant entry as he rode into Jerusalem. And then last week, we talked about him washing the feet of the disciples. He was in at the Last Supper and the First Communion. And then today, we're going to be with him in the garden. And that's where we're going today. But before we jump in there, good morning, everybody. Are you awake today? Oh, you are the true Montanans. Snow does not keep you at home, and ice doesn't keep you away. So welcome, welcome. This is going to be a fun day. Hey, we're also streaming to Columbia Falls today. Would you give Columbia Falls a shout out, everybody? And I'm excited to have you guys with us as well. I'm excited about the message today. And I think it's going to be, well, I know it's going to be pretty life-searching, life-looking, life-changing. That's where we're going for it. But before we go there, let me do a couple of shout-outs really quickly of a couple things that are coming up. Hey, we have a college here at Canvas Church. If you haven't heard about it, it's called Canvas College because we're really creative on naming. And it is a fully accredited college through Northwest University. It's like you can get the highest accreditation you can get because of Northwest University's involvement with us. And you can get a 4-year degree. And it's not just ministry degrees. And though I will tell you this, 60% of the Canvas staff that we have here and across Montana at the other campuses, 60% have a Canvas College history or a degree. So it's pretty cool how it's been a pipeline for us. But not only do you can get a ministry to get a degree there, you can get a business degree there, you can get a psychology degree there. There's several different degrees that you can get there, including your AA. If you've ever wanted to finish school, they have opportunities for you to finish your degree, whatever you started and quit. And so I will say this, in 2 weeks, we're doing a preview day right here where you can just give you sort of an idea of what the Canvas College is all about. We already have over 55 signed up to attend preview day. It's going to be pretty exciting. In fact, I shouldn't say this, but whatever. I think we will go over 100 students this fall at Canvas College for the first time. We're on that trajectory. It is very exciting what's happening there. If you are not aware of it and you are a junior or a senior, you want to drag your parents to the booth that's in the Kalispell lobby. That means if you're in Sioux Falls, you have a drive to get here. Or you can just check us out online, but get to the lobby. If you want your children to leave your house, you want to drag them to the booth so that they can see the Canvas College. So I just want to throw that out there. 2 weeks, we're doing a preview day. It'd be good to open up your eyes and see all that we're offering. It is boom what we're doing. One other thing, this is not church related, if that's okay. This is 100% personal related, and that is on Wednesday of this week. Tiffany and I learned that the children that we have had in through foster care, we finalized our adoption, and so they are now very excited about that. Here's a picture of them right here. Here's my family right here. And the glue that keeps us, really honestly, the glue that keeps us all together and moving forward is my wife, Tiffany. She is right down here in the front. I saw her walk in. Stand up, Tiffany. Let's give an honor to Tiffany. And she's Naomi saying, don't call me out. So the tall kids are our biological children. We have 5 of them. And then I can tell you about how they came around later. And then I have, here are our new 4 gears. Let me go from your left to right, and I'll introduce you. That's Jasmine June Marie gear. And then moving over is Tadeo Kevin Ward gear. And then, she is 6 years old. He is going to be 6 on Wednesday. And then David Arthur Lee Gear he just turned 5 last week. And then who's sitting on the front row right down there, this is Naomi Irene Marie Gear. And we love them and so excited what God is doing there. I have a bunch of adoption illustrations I'm going to be using in the years to come of how great it is to see God write new chapters in people's lives and how he pulls us into the family. Powerful. Okay, I got to move on because I'm getting emotional. And I saw someone crying, and that doesn't help me. I'm a sympathetic crier. Okay, we are in the last 15 hours of Jesus' life, and we are looking at John chapter 18. There's 11 verses in the section that I want to cover today. We're going to go down verse by verse and looking at this. And over the 11 verses, I've divided into 5 sections, or you could call it chapters. And each scene, that's what I should call them, scenes. 5 different scenes that I want us to look at when we look at Jesus in the garden. And we start with chapter 18, verse 1. I've entitled this section, The Garden, because that's what they're going to, is the garden. And it says this: after these things, now what things? Let me pause and tell you what that part is first. After these things, these things, this is pretty profound. John chapter 18 follows John chapter 16 and 17. So just in case you didn't know, that's real. In John chapter 16, that's what we preached last week. That was the Last Supper, the first communion, where he broke the bread. They drank the juice. That's when Judas left to go betray him. Jesus told him to leave and go do your things, and Satan came upon him. That whole scene was happening right there. In John chapter 17, canvas, John 17 is awesome. And so awesome, the message development team, when we were dreaming about where we're going to go, we're going to do a whole series on that chapter. It's where Jesus and the disciples are walking to the garden, that's where we're going to end up, but he's praying for them and for you and I. One of your homework assignments this week, read John 17 and read it as Jesus is praying for you, because that's what he's doing. And it is so powerful and so good and so rich. John chapter 17. And so the disciples probably heard him praying that prayer as they were walking toward the garden, okay? You want to grab that text or that verse. It's powerful. Now, we're going to go to John 18. So that's all the things here that had been going on. Jesus crossed the Kidron Valley with his disciples. There's some great imagery there, but I don't have time to get into it. And they entered a grove of olive trees. This is the Garden of Gethsemane. And Jesus went in, and they went to pray there. This was something they would do often. They go in to pray, and then Jesus and a couple of his disciples that were a little bit more closer to him, 3, they went further into into the garden there to pray. And this is where they're praying. And by the way, in the Synoptic Gospels, that is Matthew, Mark, and Luke, you'll see the garden take place. By the way, I got a new Bible, and it's a little bit thicker. That's because a couple weeks ago on Saturday night, I went to answer the question, and I opened up my Bible, and I couldn't read it because my eyes were fading. That's what adoption does to you. And so now I have a Bible that has font that you can read even from the balcony, okay? And it's perfect. But in John chapter 18 here, we're seeing that. I did not hear that comment, but I'm sure it was funny. In John chapter 18 here, what we're looking at is when you look at the Synoptic Gospels, Matthew, Mark, and Luke, they are written, this is very important to get, they are written to capture the humanity of Jesus. Jesus is 100% human. He can't be 99% human, or he's not the Jesus of the Bible. Because Philippians says he gave up his divine privilege and he became his creation. One of the greatest things about the gospel, one of the unique things about Christianity is God is the creator, became his creation on our behalf. And so Matthew, Mark, and Luke do an amazing job capturing the humanity of Jesus, especially in the garden. It's in the garden where these writers talk about how Jesus was under such anxiety that he began to sweat blood. That he's saying, if there's any other way, let this cup pass from me. But not my will, but your be done. All of this takes place right here in the garden. Now here's the deal. I'm not going to cover that aspect today, but I did cover it last year on Easter. And so on your app, our Canvas app, down in the lower right, we have a part called Canvas Plus. By the way, if you've never seen Canvas Plus, this is something you want to be exposed to. But if you hit Canvas Plus, I have my Easter message from last year right on there. And you can click that. That's your second homework assignment. Watch it, because you will get the Matthew, Mark, Luke perspective of the humanity of Jesus in the garden, and it will elevate the teaching that I'm going to do today. So I would encourage you to go do that. What we're doing today is we are going from John's perspective. Now, John wrote this several years after it occurred, and he's writing it to a crowd where he's emphasizing, the entire book of John is emphasizing the divine nature of Jesus. This idea that, not idea, but this reality that this is Jesus, his cosmic identity, that he is God who left heaven and came to earth. John is wanting us to see the divinity of Jesus. And you're going to see that now through the rest of this story as I preach it. Okay? Because there are moments there that are going to blow your socks off, that are just amazing. And that's because John is grasping in his writing, or not grasping, but connecting dots for us so that we can see who Jesus is in a very profound way. And when you add the humanity of Jesus and the divinity of Jesus together, you get a perfect view. So that's why I want you to go back and watch that Easter message from last year. So this is the garden. They're in the garden and they're praying. Second scene is called the plan. We go to John chapter 18, verses 2 and 3. Judas, the betrayer, knew this place because Jesus had often gone there with his disciples. So, one of the things that we know is Jesus, this is a very normal place Jesus would go to pray. And Judas knew this as well. And remember, Judas is wanting, well, let's read on and we'll see. The leading priests and the Pharisees had given Judas a contingent of Roman soldiers and temple guards to accompany him. What's going on here? Judas ran and he sold for Jesus, in a sense, for 30 pieces of silver, and they created this contingent of Roman soldiers and guard temples, and they're going to arrest Jesus. Judas said, I will turn over Jesus to you. And so here comes this Roman soldiers. Listen to what they're carrying. Now with blazing torches, lanterns, and weapons, they arrived at the Olive Garden for breadsticks, soup, and endless salad. No, that is not what the Bible says. Though the Flathead Valley needs an Olive Garden, don't we? Some of you are like, yes, some of you are like, no. Now with blazing torches, lanterns, and weapons, they arrived at the olive grove. One of the things you can see here, I want to break this text down, set the scene in motion here, is Jesus is not hiding from Judas. This is where he would always go. Jesus is positioning himself in a very significant way. And you're going to see that unfold here in a minute. But I think the other thing that you got to see about this plan in motion is Judas is coming with a contingent of Roman soldiers. Do you know that often a contingent of Roman soldiers was up to 600 soldiers? 600. Sometimes I think in the mental picture of the garden, we just think it's a few soldiers coming with him. No, he's bringing an army and guard from the temple. This is a significant group of people that are coming to arrest Jesus. And I think you got to understand why that is. Get this, just a week prior, Jesus rode into Jerusalem and the people were ready to make him what? king. Like, this is a big deal going down. And the Romans were concerned. They don't need an uprising from the Jews. That wasn't going to be good on their docket, on their watch. The Pharisees were concerned because they were like, he's overthrowing everything we do. The garden scene is an extremely political operation taking place, and everybody has a different plan. The Romans are trying to shut down a Jewish uprising. The Pharisees are trying to shut down this rogue prophet. Judas, who knows what Judas is doing? Here's my hypothesis, though I would not preach this as an inerrant word of God because it's not in the Bible. I think Judas is probably thinking, I'm going to start the revolution. He was a zealot, we know. Judas of Iscariot. He could even be thinking, this is going to be helpful. Why? Because when it doesn't go the way he thought it was going to go, he went and threw the money back and committed suicide. There are so many different plans that are taking place in the garden right here. There is a plan in motion. We are going to stop the rebellion. This is not going to take place. And that leads us to the third scene of the story. That's called the betrayal. And in the betrayal, Judas walks up to Jesus, and what does he do to him? Kisses him right on the cheek there, which is a kiss of death. There's a hurt of the betrayal here. In fact, Luke captures it very well because he's capturing the humanity side of Jesus when Luke in 22 says, you betray the Son of Man with a kiss. And this is a sting. This is a person that Jesus had spent 3 years with. There's a disappointment. There's a loss of loyalty. And I think the weight of the moment is important because as we look at the story, the way we project ourselves into the story is we're the Judas often. Every time we sin, it's a kiss of betrayal to Jesus. There's a loss of loyalty. There's a sadness there. I think we got to remember that none of us are innocent within this story. And when you remember that none of us are innocent in this story, you also understand this is what Jesus is doing. Jesus was placing himself in this position because of yours and my sin. So don't miss this moment. And Jesus is not caught by surprise when this army comes in. Jesus isn't like, whoa, this is way bigger than I thought. Jesus wasn't surprised that Judas came up and betrayed him. This isn't Jesus getting arrested. This is Jesus positioning himself to turn himself over. Like, how do we know that? Next verse. Here's what it says. Jesus fully realized all that was going to happen to him. Now, this is one of my favorite sections right here. Like, this text right here, this is the what moment of the garden. Watch this. Don't read ahead. Jesus fully realized. I can see eyes start to go. Jesus fully realized all that was going to happen to him. Now, love it. So he stepped up forward to meet him. First of all, let me just pause right there. You have a contingent of Roman soldiers, 600 men, Judas, guard temples. I mean, there's a whole army that's come to put out this rebellion. And what does Jesus do? He steps forward to face him. Braveheart Jesus. I mean, it is awesome. About 14 years ago when I was first pastoring here, I made this statement and it got me in so much trouble. I said, Jesus is such a stud. But I forgot I was in Montana because I got some letters and somebody wrote, my Jesus is not a male horse out in a field looking for a filly. I'm like, what? Where am I? I am not in Kansas anymore. So I am not saying that, okay? So if you're offended by that, I'm sorry. Jesus, what I'm saying is, think of the confidence Jesus had facing a Roman army, and he's just like, hello. I mean, it's awesome when you think about this scene for a moment. There is not an insecure moment in Jesus at this time. He just steps forward. Let's continue to read here. He stepped forward to meet them. Who are you looking for? if he said that with a smirk on his face? Who are you looking for? Jesus of the Nazarene, they replied. I am he, Jesus said. Judas, who betrayed him, was standing with them. As Jesus said, I am he, they all drew back and fell to the ground. When Jesus said, I am he, they all fell back and landed on their butts. This is awesome. What is happening right here? An army of 600 are sitting on their cabooses. And then they're jumping up and they're fixing their shield and adjusting their girdles. I mean, this is a power play moment. Now remember, John is writing this so we can see who Jesus is through the lens that he is God. And the statement that Jesus made in the garden is showing his authority. I've called this fourth scene of the story, the authority. I want to read it, verse 6 again, so we can see it. As Jesus said, I am. Now capture this. If The Chosen called me to ask me to shoot this scene in the show, this is the way I would do it. You mind if I just go a movie producer for a moment? I would have Jesus standing there, blue paint on his face, from Braveheart. This is why they didn't call me. And it'd be Sylvester Stallone, because that'd be cool. And then when they said, who are you looking for? You know, that'd be like really cool. And then they would say, but Jesus, when he says I am, this is the cool part of the show. When he says, I am he, okay, at that moment right there, they start getting blown back by the power of God. But then, at that moment right there, I'd go, you know where sometimes you go back into like previous scenes from the show? I would do that. Because, do you remember a couple months ago we did an entire series called I Am? This is the capstone moment of what John is writing. Because see, all the I am statements are in the book of John. All leading to where Jesus identifies himself as the I am. Here's what he's saying. I am the God of Moses. I am the one that led you out of Egypt. I am the one whose name is so holy, Jews can't even say my name. I am, and then we go back to the statements. Now, you got to get this. I go back to the scene where Jesus had just fed the 5,000 people, and then he says, I am the bread of life. And then I'd cut back to the Roman soldier going, and then I'd go to the next scene where Jesus is standing at the temple and there's 4 lanterns that are lit, and one of the lights is the prophecy of the coming Messiah, where Jesus standing in the court there of the temple, he says, I am the light of the world. Roman soldier. Like this is all taking place, slow motion falling back, and Jesus is going, I am the gate. I am the good shepherd. Like this is all coming to the scene. This is what Jesus is saying in the garden, and the Roman soldiers are heading to their butts. Because Jesus is doing a flex. He's showing who he is. I am get this, Lazarus come walking out of the grave scene, and Jesus goes, I am the resurrection and the life. Roman soldier, going backwards. I am the way, the truth, and the life. I am the grapevine. I am he. Wham, they fall down. What a scene. Oh, I would love to have been there. Love to have been there. This is Jesus. This is Jesus. He's in the garden. This is who he is. Don't miss who's standing in front of you. And boom, they're all down. Authority. I think you got to see the authority in this scene. At the mention of his name, Jesus proves he cannot be taken by force. This force, no matter how large it wasn't gonna take Jesus. He could have snapped his fingers and they could have disappeared like dust. He could have breathed upon them and they could have ceased to exist. Why? Because he was at creation when he breathed life into humanity. Because he's divine. He's God. He is the I am that John proclaims and he himself proclaimed again and again and again. Don't miss this moment. Because when you miss this moment, insecurity begins to well up within you. Because you forget who walks with you and talks with you. When you miss who Jesus is, insecurity takes its place. We live in a society that insecure has become just a thing that we walk through life and we're comfortable with it. We shouldn't be comfortable with insecurity. Insecurity is the expression of pride hidden in our life that we don't even know. Pride hides behind insecurity because it gets our eyes on ourselves to feel insecure and off of who the I am is. I think insecurity is just simply a lack of faith. When we look at our own shortcomings and our own weaknesses and our own sins, we begin to focus on ourselves, and that will always lead to insecurity. And you're always thinking about yourself. And the middle letter of the word pride is I. That's the homeschool people. I. Hear my heart on this. Jesus followers should be the most confident people on the planet. Why is that? Because I am with him. And he walks with me. He puts his spirit inside of me. When his spirit of the living God is inside of me, the same spirit that will raise Jesus from the dead, there is no room for insecurity. And I would just challenge us. Do we see Jesus for who he is? Or are we so overwhelmed by who we're not? And maybe an area that our faith can grow is on the assurance of who Jesus is in our life. And when we face obstacles that we don't understand, we don't know how we're going to get over, and insecurity begins to come into our minds like we're facing an army beyond what we could ever deal with, we go, I'm with him, the I am. And it shifts your perspective. Don't miss who's in front of you. When insecurity comes because the headlines don't look positive, when the bank account doesn't look positive, I'm with him. He has not given me a spirit of fear. I'm with him. Jesus followers should be the most confident people on the planet. And it's an area every one of us in this room, every one of us at Columbia Falls, every one of us that's watching online because we were scared of the weather, because we were insecure. Just joking. Just joking. Sort of passive aggressively. We should grow. Why? I am is in the garden. In John chapter 18, verse 7 and 9, now let's go back to the story real quickly. This is an interesting moment because this is when they're all standing up and adjusting themselves. And verse 7, once more he asked them, Adrian! No, that's not what happened. Once more he asked them, who are you looking for? Now, he already knew who they were looking for. This is just a boom moment right here. Who are you looking for? And again they replied, Jesus the Nazarene. I told you that I am he, Jesus said. Now, 1 second. I want to read that next part, but just wait 1 second. This time they didn't fall over. Let me tell you. The Pharisees had a plan. Judas had a plan. The Romans had a plan. Jesus is in control. They had great plans. But Jesus is the authority in this moment. He just knocked them on their can. And then he shows his authority again in another significantly powerful way. Because he says right here, I told you that I am he, Jesus said. And since I am the one you want, let these others go. He is totally controlling the scene. He did this to fulfill his own statement, which, by the way, he prayed in John chapter 17, and he said it in John 6. He did this to fulfill his own statement, I did not lose a single one of those you have given me. Who's controlling this entire scene? Jesus is controlling this entire scene. This is huge. This is not an arrest. This is a surrender. This is a submission. But he's not surrendering to the Romans, and he's not surrendering to the Pharisees, and he's not surrendering or submitting to Judas. This is a submission and a surrender to the Father's plan over Jesus. Not my will, but your be done. This is Jesus submitting to the plan that the Father had before him. And this could have been a battle. In fact, both sides thought this was going to be the battle. Like there was going to be a war in the Garden of Gethsemane. How do I know that? Because Peter pulled his sword. And Peter had just said a couple hours earlier, I will die for you, Jesus. And that truly was what he intended to do. Because look, we read it. This is called, I called this last section, scene, the confusion. John chapter 18, verse 10 and 11. Here's what it says. Then Simon Peter drew a sword and slashed off the right ear of the high priest's slave, which, dude, they were going to lose this war if it came to Peter's sword. Because he was going for the head and he got the ear. I mean, this is why Peter was a fisherman. But you don't lose the intensity of the moment. The disciples were ready for a war. They were ready for an upheaval. They were ready for a battle. And Peter was like, dude, let's go. Jesus is like, I mean, here's what Jesus says. But Jesus said to Peter, put your sword back in your sheath. Which, by the way, since I've adopted 2 little boys, I'm saying that all the time as well, okay? Put your sword back in its sheath. Shall I not drink from the cup of suffering? That's Easter message that you're going to listen to. Shall I not drink from the cup of suffering the Father has given me? Who's in control of this thing? Jesus is. He reached down and picked up the ear and put it back on the high priest. Like everybody's ready for a battle and Jesus is playing Mr. Potato Head. Jesus is totally owning the scene. And I want you to get that, because when life looks chaotic and life looks crazy and you don't understand what's going on and it's above your pay grade, I'm with him. Put your sword away. In fact, I called this scene the confusion because here's what happened. Peter ran away. Luke ran away. Matthew ran away. The boys of thunder, James and John, ran away. In fact, it tells us that all of them fled. They all left. Why is that? The disciples ran and fled, and Jesus was all alone with an army in front of him. I want you to hear this. This is where the rubber hits the road. They had confidence in their plan until the moment of submission and surrender. They were ready to give up their light and fight. They were not ready for submission and surrender. And a lot of us are just like that. We love the Jesus plan until it comes to submission and surrender. And when it comes to submission and surrender, we want to go our own way. When it comes to submission and surrender, we'd rather do it our way. But Jesus is the I am, the way, the truth, and the life. And so we're just like the disciples, like, what? I don't want to submit to your morality. I'd rather do it my way. I don't want to honor you with my finances. I'd rather do it my way. I don't want to wait until I'm married. I'd rather do it my way. There is a way that seems right to man, but in the end it leads to death, the Bible says. And when it comes to submission and surrender, we check out of the plan to do our own way. It's going to cost me more. This isn't what I had envisioned. This isn't what I had dreamed. But I can't control this. I can pull out a sword and control the situation, but submission and surrender, they're the bad guys. Jesus wasn't submitting to them. He wasn't submitting to those who were in front of him, but to the Father in heaven. Not my will, but your will be done. There was a plan in motion. It wasn't Judas's plan. It wasn't even Peter's plan. It wasn't the Romans' plan. It wasn't the Pharisees' plan. It was the Father's plan. And when you submit to the Father's plan, beyond what you can even comprehend takes place. And this submission, surrender that he puts himself into the Roman soldiers' hands, but a submission to the Father, they take him to the trial. That's next week's sermon. But they take him to the trial where he'll be whipped and beaten beyond recognition, and then ultimately they would take him to the cross, and then they take him to the grave. And Jesus was restoring humanity to the greatest future ever. But it didn't look like it when you look at the plan. And so often we look through life not knowing the plan. So we're not going to submit to it. And we pull out our sword to fight when it's not the time. Because we didn't submit to the plan. Like, what would Jesus say if he was to walk out and talk to us right now? We know what he would say. It's found in Matthew. In Matthew chapter 16. And in Matthew chapter 16, verses 24 and 25, here's what he says. Then Jesus said to his disciples, now watch this. If any of you wants to be my follower, you must give up your own way. That means I got to give up my plan. You must give up your own way, and you must take up your cross. Not only do I got to give up my plan, I got to die to my plan. I got to die to how I want to live. I got to die to what I want to do. I got to die to what I think could be right and submit to the Father's plan. Now watch this though. It's a warning to us. Words of Jesus. Someone could preach this message 1,000 years from now and read the words of Jesus, and they will be as relevant 1,000 years from now as they were 2,000 years ago. And here's what he says. If you try to hang on to your life, if you try to hang on to your morality, if you try to hang on to your way that you like, that's contrary to God's way, here's what will happen. You will lose it. Jesus isn't saying it with a finger like this. I communicated it wrong. He was saying it like this. Come, don't lose your life. But if you will give up your life for my sake, as Jesus gave up his life for the Father, you will save it. Now get this, here's the conclusion. Jesus knows the path, and he's familiar with the plan. So when you're in your personal garden scene, and your adversaries, your demons, your weaknesses come in an army like to take you out, Jesus is with you in the garden, and he can knock them on their can. got to lean into his plan. And he will walk with you through the trial. He's been through the trial. You'll hear it next week. So when you walk through your trial, he will go with you. He will lead you through the trial. And when you come to your point of death, your cross, he won't abandon you there. He will walk with you through that. Because Jesus' point in your life is never to take you to the cross. That's not where the path ends. He's taking you to resurrection, where the old is gone and the new has come, where you are transformed. You are transformed into the perfect image of Jesus, where you stand before the Heavenly Father justified as you walk along in this life being sanctified. So the question is, will you follow the plan? Will you follow his way? Final thought. Maybe you're sitting here and you would say, Kevin, I've screwed it up too bad. Jesus would never want me. Watch this. Everyone who fled in the garden becomes a follower. Every one of them. Everyone who left Jesus standing alone in the garden. Even Peter, who would deny him again and again and again, will return back and follow Jesus after the resurrection. It's never too late for the mercy and the grace and the love of Jesus. So will you submit and surrender to the Father's plan? Would you grab that connection card that's in the seat back in front of you, or on your phone? You can fill it out digitally. We get a lot of those. Here's the responses. Maybe you need to decide to follow Jesus today. You've been living on your own and you have never chosen to be a Jesus follower. Maybe today's the day. And just mark that box, but pray in your heart, today, Jesus, I choose to follow you. I choose to follow your path and your plan. You have good for me. I wrote the second one. I always want to write something that everybody can respond to, even if you're not a Jesus follower. Maybe you're sitting here and you've just heard this message and what your heart is saying, surrender is a stupid plan. Mark that. Maybe it's the third one. Don't miss what is right in front of me. Maybe your insecurity has blinded you to the Jesus who's walking with you. And then lastly, if Jesus will follow God's plan, I can follow God's plan. Would you stand with me all across this place? Here's how I want to end. 9 a.m. I can just tell you, let me tell you what Canvas is. It's a bunch of screwed up people following a perfect, loving God. And that's why we end our gatherings often this way, with our eyes open and everybody looking at each other. You're here. And you would say, Kevin, there's areas of my life that are not following God's plan, and I need to readjust them. If that's you, in a moment of vulnerability, will you just lift up your hand? Man, all across the place. I love you, Canvas. You're so honest and true. So here's my encouragement to you. Confess that to God. While I pray for you, you confess, here's the areas that are out of alignment with you. And I want to readjust them back. Submit, surrender to a God that loves you so much. And so, Father, we just, in a moment of realness, of examine our hearts. We want to stay with you in the garden. We want to follow the plan. We want to submit our ways to your ways. For you are the way, the truth, and the life. We want to lose our life so we can be restored to life. And your ways are better than our ways. Your ways bring more peace than our ways. Your ways bring more joy than our ways. Why would we never want your way? So help us not be foolish, but help us to be wise, to follow you with all of our heart, all of our soul, all of our strength, and all of our mind. In Jesus' name. Everybody said? Canvas, I love you. Have a great, great day. We'll see you next week as we go to the trials of Jesus.